Hello, everyone. Actually, I didn't develop cloudUPDRS. I only did the machine learning part, the deep learning part. It's a huge team behind cloudUPDRS. I don't think I have the slide with all the contributors, but there is the paper. It's published online in the Journal of Pervasive Computing, and you can see all the contributors there. So it's definitely not just me. Actually, this is the first time I'm doing this presentation, so because I'm going to run through everything, you're going to have to bear with me until I get to the machine learning part. Okay, so Parkinson's disease. What is it, right? So it's a degenerative disease, neurological condition associated with a wide spectrum of motor and cognitive disorders. Symptoms, right? So this includes tremor, slowness of movement, freezing. It happens roughly in one in 500 people. Usually it's more predominant as the older you get, so over 50 years. And it has also cognitive and physiological symptoms like anxiety, hallucinations, depression, and sometimes psychosis, right? This, again, depending on how advanced it is. Obviously, there's no cure for it, right? So the underlying cause of this degenerative so-called, the cause are these so-called dopaminogenic neurons, right? So these small group of neurons, I don't have a light, that affect the release of dopamine in the brains is there in this region. You can see where the arrows come from, right? So that's the region that releases the dopamine in the brain that's affected by Parkinson's. So that affects the whole nervous system. What does this mean? This means that the disease will be expressed quite uniquely, right? Because it affects the neurons. So everyone will be affected in different ways. Some people might get voluntary movement affected, or the mood, or it might be released as addiction or increased stress. It's quite different for everyone, right? So how do we manage it? Because there's no cure for it. Obviously, we manage it by replacing the dopamine that's missing, right? And to do this, we have a wide range of medication, right? So here you can see the prodromal markers will be something like sleep disorder, loss of smell, constipation, depression. These obviously are generic, right, for everything, not only Parkinson's. But as it progresses, and you can see early Parkinson's, when you have the slowness, the stiffness, the shaking, right, we can provide medicine for that in form of certain pills. As it progresses more and it becomes more moderate, we can change the medication, right, because we're obviously monitoring it. And when it's very complex, we might need to do deep brain stimulation or, I don't know, very serious medication, right? So this is it, right? The care is, we need to focus on life management, right? So we need to find good treatments so people can live many years with this condition, right? So the question here arises, how do we monitor the symptoms? How do we measure the treatment response, both in daily clinical practice and when testing new drug treatments, right? Because we need to assess how the drugs are working with the patient, especially because it's quite a unique expressed illness. So this is a bit, I think it's missing parts. Okay, the Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale, because there is currently no definitive test for the diagnosis of Parkinson's disease, and only a post-mortem examination can confirm that a subject actually had Parkinson's or not, physicians decided to evaluate the symptoms, right? So we can't really do brain scans or CT scans or EEG scans to figure out if a patient is exhibiting Parkinson's or not. Instead, we use these imaging techniques to eliminate other causes, right? For the assessment of Parkinson's, people have developed this Unified Parkinson's Disease Rating Scale that focuses purely on motor and motor performance during various tasks, right? So we evaluate only motors. So the standard, this is the standard clinical protocol for assessing motor symptoms in Parkinson's. It has four parts focused on groups of related systems, and we are only using part 3 in our app, which is the motor examination. We're using this mostly because this consists of specific motor examinations, and it limits the degrees of freedom that patients need to do in order to assess the degree of Parkinson's. So this has 33 scores based on 18 items. You can see the discrepancy. It's usually because you are testing both the left side and the right side of the body, right? Because sometimes Parkinson's may only show up in one of the sides initially. Okay, so the problem here is that the patients typically are assessed only once or twice a year by a nurse and a doctor, and obviously it costs a lot of money to do this visit, and there are variations in scoring depending on the experience of the doctor, right? Because it's very objective. So obviously, we are in need of a solution here, and we have thought to come up with the cloudUPDRS, right? To turn it into a mobile health app for clinical use, right? We followed all the steps to get it certified as a Class 1 medical device in the UK and subsequently in Europe, because the UK adheres to European standards, right? So we have developed this to address the UPDRS challenge, is this being the first smartphone app to achieve certification as a Class 1 medical device by the regulatory agencies in the UK to assess clinical, to do clinical assessment of motor symptoms of Parkinson's. Okay, so this aims to rate Parkinson's disease as well as an experienced clinician, and it extends and adapts the UPDRS protocol. Right? It would produce the scores in the same scale, and it is designed to do lifelong examinations at home. So you can use it every day. You will get roughly the same results, and it uses only the accelerometer on regular smartphones to assess tremor and sometimes touch screen to do tapping tests, right? Obviously, this is a modern app, so we used all the development life cycle, Dockerized containers, easy scalability, everything, right? It only runs on the Android operating system. I wanted to add for the moment. Okay. Obviously, the app design was very important because the app implements a bespoke user interaction designed to ensure that the data recorded captures the actual motor performance features as required for the successful application of UPDRS, right? So we need certain characteristics to be captured by the app, but also we need to take into account that these people have motor inabilities, right? So they have certain constraints. They don't have the same freedom of movement. It is very dependent on context, right? So we needed to design the app in such a way to tailor for all these unforeseen circumstances, right? So here we need to remember that because it is required to because we are requiring the execution of specific action sequences, the app restricts the degrees of freedom of the individual and thus imposes structure and disambiguates user context just by limiting what we're asking them to do. So if we want them to tap the screen, we know exactly what to expect from the user. Or if we would like to assess gait, they would be asked to walk a straight line and turn around. And because we can infer context, we don't necessarily need an expert physician to be evaluating the procedure, right? This is why we have limited the app only to part 3 of the UPDRS and more specifically to only 17 individual observations out of 33, as you have seen before, right? So we are looking at gait, kinetic postural and resting tremor for left and right hands, leg agility and resting tremor, right? And also we're looking for tapping on both hands with 1 and 2 fingers, and a questionnaire. This is interesting. The questionnaire will give us the time and most recent medication intake is there, because it is important to evaluate the impact that medication will have on on the performance of the performance of the disease. Okay. Another key insight that we need to take into account here is that we had to do an extensive patient and clinical study to see the what would hinder the wider adoption of cloudUPDRS by patient communities, right? So to understand how to best facilitate this, we carried out these extensive interviews with clinicians, technologists, patients, carers, and patient advocates. 22 individuals in total, right? Helped us do this, and we also have a web survey with participants from research volunteer. This is a pool of Parkinson's UK, where we got 116 unique submissions here, and 3 audience panels. Across all studies. Okay, so what we've seen is that the majority of Parkinson's disease, Parkinson's patients would use the app, 86%, right? The interesting thing is that more than half of them said that they would prefer if it was under 5 minutes. Some of them, I think 24 to 30, agreed to even a 10 minutes evaluation, 27%, sorry. What they were most concerned about was the need to understand their condition, and none of them expressed any privacy concerns. Here again, it is interesting to note that most of them said that they would like the app to be focused on not on not on the negative side of the illness. So they would only be interested in positive progression. This was one of the things that we've learned from doing this patient and clinician study. Right, so after the study, we have two key challenges did arise, right? One I tackled on personally and collaborated on the other one. So what we need to do, we have the app is ready, we've done the study, everything is there. We need to ensure compliance with the protocol. So we need to ensure that the patient is actually taking the right test, and we are recording the correct data so we can evaluate the score, right? The Parkinson's disease score. And also the test duration, because tests at the moment last 60 seconds for each of the 17. The duration is quite prolonged. So we need to ensure compliance with the protocol and reduce test duration. To ensure compliance with the protocol, we have adopted the deep learning approach, right? So the deep learning approach, we have only tested, we have reported the results here for the pronation supination observation, right? So where you hold the phone in your hand and you just do a forward movement and backward, bring it back to the chest, and you are recording the accelerometer data for this. So we are using deep learning to figure out if the patient did the correct movement. In case we have the correct movement, we will then pass it on to processing, and then we will get the UPDRS score. Right, so for each test, we learn the data has been captured according to the prescribed process, right? Record the good and bad tests, train the neural network to distinguish the two classes, reject back data. So because these tests vary in length, we had to homogenize the data. So we took a sliding window approach, 256. So because the data is from accelerometers and phone hardware varies, you need to think about resampling, right? So you need at least 50 hertz sample rate, so 50 samples per second, and it can go up to 200, I think, or maybe, I don't know, even 500 in more modern phones, but let's say 200. Then you need to resample it, and then you would do a sliding window, so the inputs to your network are fixed. And then you might want to do an overlapping on that so that the locality of the features in the signal get captured better, right? We've only had 227 complete assessment samples from 8 males and 4 female patients that exhibited Parkinson's disease. So as you can see, this is quite a small data set. I don't think I have but it's also very imbalanced, right? So the balance between the classes is, I think, is 3 to 1 for the good samples. We don't really have a lot of bad samples to train the networks. So if you know about this, it is best to have very balanced data so you can train your algorithms properly. Okay. This is how the signal looks like. So we've had 3 axes of acceleration. I wanted to say that before we opted for this this type of data processing, we did a baseline in a previous paper where we only took the middle segment of each of the recordings. So here, as you can see, we are traversing the signal with the 256 window overlapping. You can see the overlapping there in all of them. And we are producing 2 types of inputs. We are producing 3x256, which is more like a matrix. Yeah. This works very well with convolutional neural networks because you are scanning the inputs. And we are also vectorizing it where we're just stacking the axes on top. So we can have a deep multilayer perceptron baseline, right? So we can actually assess if we need the convolution or not, right? And also the main point behind it is that, oh, why not combine more models and do a nice ensemble at the end in case we don't have really good outcomes. And you will see that actually helped. So we parse the data. We generate 2 new data sets, one being, oh, OK, it's almost gone. One being this like volume stuff that we're going to use convolutional networks on, and the other being the vectorized one that we're going to use for deep multilayer perceptrons. So this is the novel architecture that I used in the paper, and that so the idea was to create something in TensorFlow so that we can move it on the mobile phone eventually. So what I did here is I use batch normalization a lot because because of the nature of the signal, the gradients vanished very quickly, so I needed to use batch normalization. I don't think you can see it properly here, but we have an initial convolutional layer, we normalize it, and then we share the weights and add the weights in between. This ensures that the gradient stays strong and clean, right? If we didn't add the weights, as you can see you can see the weight. There are weight. You can watch the slides if you don't see properly. If you don't add the weights, the gradients will homogenize and the networks will stop learning. So that adding step is very important, right? And we've also added another classification layer at the end that helps with separating these classes. Okay. Some notes on performance. As you can see, we've tested a lot of classifiers. The best of which is this recurrent convolutional neural network, right? So the recurrence is in the fact that we are adding those shared weights. That's like unrolled recurrence, right? If you know how a recurrent neural network works, you're just adding the weights, so you're keeping the previous state, and we can control how many. As you can see, the recurrent convolutional network is the best approach here. The problem, however, is in the true negatives and the false positives percentage. I have to roll it, right? OK, OK. OK, finally, we've decided to ensemble everything, and you can see the improvement here is almost 90% accuracy. And the false negatives have dropped to 14%. So ensembling really works. There's a lot more to present, how we've reduced the test duration by using the quick test. I won't be able to, but I'm sure you can get the slides from. Thank you. Sorry, I overshot it.